Watercolor animals look scary because they seem so detailed, but this dog is just a few simple layers stacked the right way. And today I'll show you one layering technique that makes animal portraits feel much easier even if you're a beginner. Hi, I'm Françoise. Welcome back to Painting in Chocolate. We're going to paint this dog together step by step, and if you can put paint to paper, you'll be able to use this on any animal. Before we dive into the technique, there's something that makes animal painting a lot easier, and that is keeping your colors simple. Here's the reference I'm using, and notice this now. There are two main colors, the warmer golden fur versus the cooler gray parts. Big light areas and strong dark areas. And that's exactly what we need to pay attention to nail any animal portrait. And that's why I recommend to build your palette like this. Light tones using the white of the paper. Mid-tones, and those are your main colors. So for me, it's going to be a warm fur color for the orangey areas where the light hits the fur, and burnt sienna will do. And a cool color for the light gray areas in the fur. Turquoise will be nice to render that because on the reference, those are actually a bit gray blue. And I don't own a ready-made turquoise, that's why I mix ultramarine blue and phthalo green light. But if you're not comfortable with color mixing yet, don't worry, just keep it simple with ultramarine blue. The warm and cool tones together are going to make the fur look more natural and less flat, just like it is on the reference. Finally, one dark color for shadows, and I chose Payne's Gray. That type of color is perfect for noses, eyes, mouth, and deeper shadows when you need to push contrast. So we're going to paint the whole dog with 3 colors and maybe a touch of pink or red for the fleshy bits, and that will be enough. So if colors still distract you like it was the case for me in the beginning, forget about a huge fancy palette. Just pick one light tone, 1 or 2 mid-tones, and a dark tone. And no matter the technique, what paper you choose also matters to have success with animal paintings. So I recommend a cold pressed paper because it's not too rough and it doesn't dry super fast like hot press. 100% cotton is amazing if you have that, but if you don't, it's still absolutely fine to practice this technique on other cold press papers. We're ready to dive in the layering technique because every painting starts with a base layer. And for animal art, we want something soft and fuzzy to begin with. So I start wet on wet. I wet the dog and the background with a flat brush. This does 2 things. It gives us those blurry, out of focus areas you see in the photo where the fur is farther back. And it stops us from painting every single hair tight from the very beginning, which is one of the biggest problems I see in animal portraits. Don't overthink this stage because as long as the paint is light and watery, you can't really ruin anything. I begin with my warm color, burnt sienna, and I drop it in wherever I see those golden areas on the photo. If it spreads outside the dog's face, that's fine. I just use a clean, almost dry brush to lift it. And you can see it's very forgiving when the paint is this light. Then I switch to my cool mix, that turquoise from ultramarine and phthalo green light. I block in the cooler parts of the fur. Those areas that look more gray-blue on the photo instead of warm and orangey. Notice I'm leaving plenty of white parts wherever I see larger highlights. I don't worry about every tiny detail yet, just the big areas. And at this stage, the dog is going to look a bit awkward and unfinished, and that's normal. Watercolor often has that ugly phase, and you're going to need a bit of resilience with the medium. The point of this base layer is just to place the right colors in roughly the right places in a very soft way. And if you make a few mistakes, it's not a big deal. Now we're going to do something that's not the classic light to dark watercolor rule, but it's going to work very well for animal or even just human portraits, and it will help you a lot if you're still a beginner. We are going to strengthen the main features early. The eyes, the nose, the mouth line, and a few key shadow shapes around the face. The reason we do this now is that these shapes hold the portraits together. If you lose them, if you lose the sketch, everything becomes harder, and you've probably experienced losing your sketch before. It's not fun. This might happen if we only keep layering over the entire face. Even if it feels like a mismatch to do this early on, strong features on top of very washed out fur is okay. To do this, I mixed the dark Payne's gray with burnt sienna, so it really shows on top of that soft base. Go dark enough that the features feel secured. So now I've blocked in the eyes, the nose and nostrils slightly darker than the rest, the mouth line, and the main shapes around the neck and the outside of the face. Don't stress about perfection here still, we just want those landmarks in place so we have something solid to build around later. And now it's going to be easy to work on the rest of the fur with the warm and cool colors because we already have a fuzzy base layer and the features. So I start painting again with my cool tone, the turquoise mix. This time, the mix is a bit stronger than the first wash because remember that we need to move forward, but we can do it safely now since we have our base and the main landmarks. Your focus here should really be to refine where that cool color really belongs by always checking the reference and also still keep some white areas wherever it applies. Then I do the same with burnt sienna, the warm tone. I reinforce the warm parts of the fur, especially where the light hits it. And when we paint fur like this, 3 important things change here compared to how we used layers before. Number 1 is that the mix is stronger than the fuzzy base. There's more pigment, so the color reads more clearly, but it's still a bit softer than the darkest features. Number 2, you want to overlap the cool and the warm colors on purpose. For example here, even though I want some pure turquoise and some pure burnt sienna to show, I'm okay with them sitting on top of each other in places. And actually, it is that overlap that creates a smooth and believable transition between warm and cool colors. It's what makes the fur look more realistic. And number 3 is to pay attention to soft versus sharp edges for fur. I use this technique of a clean and damp brush to soften an edge, even when I was strengthening the features before. But here, it's even more important since animal fur generally looks very smooth, unless of course for style, you want another look. To soften harsh edges, I use 2 brushes, one loaded with color to apply the stroke, and one that is clean and just damp to soften the edge right away where I don't want to see a hard line. Already at this point, you can see that the portrait looks pretty good, and you could absolutely stop here and still have a lovely painting. But if you strive for a bit more realism and you've made it here, one more layer will give you a lot of impact without a lot of extra work. And now we're going to use the layering technique at its strongest, but only in tiny, targeted areas. I mix a thicker, darker version of my warm tone, burnt sienna, with a bit of Payne's gray now, so it still connects to the rest of the fur, but it shows more. Same consistency, just darker. I use this to deepen the shadows, and you can clearly see the impact that has on how the ear looks now. I also love it to link the dark features more into the surrounding fur. It looks more finished and realistic. And where it's more visible, I find, is the area beneath the nose. I also add the few extra accents that matter in an animal painting like this one. At this stage, you can go all in with your darkest color. It'd be hard to make it impossible to remove mistakes on such a finished version of the dog. That's why I know it's okay now to use it in a thick, super dark version. So when I say thick, it just needs to be thicker than what you were using before, meaning more paint and less water. It also needs to be darker, and we're going to achieve that by using paint spray alone. But you should still be able to paint without effort. The paintbrush must glide on paper. If it doesn't, the paint feels too dry, then you'll need to add a bit of water. You can use this way of layering to touch up small details, tiny parts in the painting, like the pupils and the darker edges around the eyes, but also the darkest parts in the nose, the mouth area, and a few whiskers. And to magnify the effect, I sometimes need to bring a few highlights back because it's very hard to keep them all from the start when they're tiny. So for soft highlights, I use lifting. I wet the area I want to lighten with a clean brush, and then I press a paper towel to lift the paint. For tiny details like sharp white whiskers, I might use a sharp tool very sparingly to scratch a few lines. It is not a must, but it looks nice when it's discreet. And for those tiny highlights that need a little extra pop, I add a touch of white gouache. It's very subtle. Notice that this is where the dog really comes alive, even though we're not inventing new things here. We've just used the layers we built before, step by step, and each time pushing a few places darker or lighter with more layers. So if you'd like a little help when watercolor gets tricky, try this full step-by-step dog portrait in real time with every brushstroke and all the little decisions. That is on my Patreon, and the link is in the description as well. I hope this made watercolor animals feel a lot more doable for you. Let me know if you want to see more of those on the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.